All right, so that's a 15-pound turkey, and I can pick it up on Wednesday before that, right? About 4 o'clock? Great. Thank you very much. Hello, everyone, and welcome to History Scene. I was just ordering my Thanksgiving dinner. After all, it is November, and we're looking this month at fine fall food. Now, in this episode, we're going to consider how such large Thanksgiving-type feasts were cooked in a day when there was no digital readout on the stove, and in fact, microwave ovens weren't even a glimmer in anyone's eye, much less the cook's. We're going to even show you that anyone can cook by letting our friend Hugo Backintime get in the kitchen. Then, we're going to go over the river and through the woods and examine some of the roads here in the Fredericksburg area that actually took you to Grandma's. But first, as we stand here at the corner of Lewis and Charles Street at the Mary Washington House in Fredericksburg's downtown historic district, we want to tell you about something that's going to happen in this neighborhood in early December. But to do that, we're going to walk 2 blocks right down William Street. So come along with me.
It may not be the biggest, it's just a little show with stories of Virginia and places you may know. It's about the times and faces that made us who we are. We'll take you to those places, we'll travel near and far. We have history around every tree. We have old-time tales to hear and see. Our past will come alive again on your TV screen, while having fun with good old friends here on History Scene, where all the places and faces are traces of history. You'll see us then, you'll see us now, here on History Scene.
History Scene is presented by the Fredericksburg Area Museum and Cultural Center. History Scene is an independently produced community television show by local Fredericksburg, Stafford, and Spotsylvania residents. The programming objectives of History Scene are to educate about our rich historical heritage and stimulate the local tourism aspect of our economy. History Scene is made possible by grants from businesses, organizations, and individuals. To support these objectives and be recognized as you choose, please contact Heritage Media LLC. Your support is critical to allowing History Scene to be brought to you, our viewers.
History.
Now, we've walked 2 blocks and we've come to the Lewis store on Caroline Street. It's the headquarters for Historic Fredericksburg Foundation Incorporated, HFFI. It's Fredericksburg's most premier historic preservation group. It's in a beautiful 1749 brick building that in itself could be a whole segment on History Scene. In the interest of full disclosure, I want to let you know that my bride and I have been members of this organization for years, and right now it's my honor to serve as an officer in this fine group. But this December, for the 40th year, this group is going to have its very popular Christmas candlelight tour. Historic homes, privately owned, are open to the public and decorated for the holiday season. Everyone enjoys it, and it's an important fundraiser for this nonprofit group. Today, if you need something from a store, you get in the car, drive over, park, get a shopping cart, and get your own items. But in colonial days, you'd walk to the store, come in and walk to the counter, where then they would get the things you need, be that a cone of sugar, a container of spices. They'd wrap them for you and you'd carry them home. Today, this building has the offices that this time of year are busily planning that candlelight tour. A tour ticket gets you inside some of the area's older and privately owned historic homes. This year, they're all in the Princess Anne, Amelia Street, and Charles Street blocks right around here at the Lewis store, which is headquarters for the tour. Stop by the Candlelight Tour Gift Shop at 1201 Caroline Street, that's over at the Regional Library Auditorium, to pick up your tour booklet and to purchase a 2010 Christmas ornament. There will be food items, craft items, and HFFI items for sale, as well as complimentary cider and cookies for your enjoyment. And the Old Town Trolley will be running a regular circuit through the neighborhood to help you get from one place to another, even back to your car. After you take a walk, short walk, on up Lewis Street, you come to Princess Anne Street, and we have the first group of homes that are going to be on the tour. Now, today, we're only going to be looking at the exterior of the homes, but can you imagine how nice they'll look all decorated up for the holidays during the whole tour next month? Our first stop here at 1108 Princess Anne Street is this beautiful home built actually in 1838. It's in the Greek Revival style, and look at that beautiful front porch. If you take the tour, you'll learn that it had a very special guest in March of 1862. Now, we've come just down the street and across it to the next two properties. That's 1105 and 1103 here on Princess Anne. By the way, though Princess Anne will be open, the cross streets are going to be closed so that you can safely go from one property to the other. This wonderful residence at 1105 Princess Anne has been getting some renovation attention, and you'll love seeing what the owners have done inside and out. Speaking of inside and out, that's where you need to look when you go next door and visit 1103 Princess Anne. It's always been offices, or recently has, but now it's a law office here at the corner of busy Amelia and Princess Anne Streets. Back across the street, and also at this busy corner, is 303 Amelia, constructed in 1817. Not only is the house lovely, but the dependencies or outbuildings still stand and show you how the entire property was used. Now, you only have to walk one block up Amelia Street to get to Charles Street, where we can see the last two remaining private homes on the tour. We're now at 1015 Charles Street. This beautiful cream-colored brick structure was built in 1847. Now, like many urban houses, it's deeper than it is wide. You needed all the room you could get, but it went back. The Greek Revival style is lovely. Look at the little portico over the doorway. Now, I've recrossed Amelia Street and I'm in front of 1100 Charles Street. The house was built in 1824. Now, on History Scene, we often try to tell you the different layers of history that took place on any one spot. This house, 1100 Charles, and in fact the whole neighborhood, sit on land that was surveyed by none other than a guy named George Washington. And he did it for his brother-in-law, Fielding Lewis, so Fielding could sell off the lots. And now I've walked another block on Charles Street, and I'm to 1200 Charles Street. That's back at the Mary Washington House. Your ticket includes admissions here, too. And like the other houses, it'll be decorated for the holiday season. Now, tickets. You can always stop by the headquarters down at the Lewis store or check on hffi.org. You can also buy tickets at Mocha Mo's and at the Joseph Beth Bookstore. The Spotsylvania Visitor Center has tickets, as does the Fredericksburg Visitor Center down on Caroline Street. They cost $25 if you buy them early. That's a $5 savings. Children are cheaper, and if you can get together a group, that's cheaper too. Now, there is the separate Saturday night cocktail party event downtown, which features a tour of 528 Caroline Street that was renovated last year and is part of the Richard Johnston Inn down there. But you can get on that information separately at hffi.org. Now, we're going back to considering how to cook that big Thanksgiving meal 250 years ago, way before electricity made it relatively easy. To do that, we're going to go to the Mary Washington House kitchen right in the back here. So come along and let's meet some other friends of History Scene.
History.
Now think back to some of those home preview shows you've seen. The buyer, potential buyer, goes into the kitchen, looks and sees the Formica countertops, and says, "Oh my goodness, this is so dated. I couldn't possibly cook a meal here." Well, we're going to visit a really dated kitchen. It's the one belonging to Mary Ball Washington, that's George's mother, and it's here at the Mary Washington House in Fredericksburg. It's owned and preserved by Preservation Virginia. The group originally acquired it in 1891 to keep it from being taken down to the World's Fair in Chicago in 1892. Now I'm going to be joined by Myra Wiggins, who's the administrative assistant here at the Mary Washington House. Hello, Myra.
Hi, Scott. How are you?
Fine. Welcome to History Scene.
Thank you.
Now, what can you tell me about the kitchen building?
Well, as you can see, Scott, the kitchen is an outbuilding, which means that it's not connected to the main portion of the house. There are several reasons for this. One being that the fire generates a lot of heat, and especially in the summertime, you don't want that. Another reason is the danger of fire. You don't want the kitchen attached in the event that it catches fire, which would also burn the house. But the reason that I like the best is Hugh Jones from Colonial Williamsburg noted that the smell of victuals being prepared, these people ate a lot of meat and a lot of fish, and during the summertime, that would really make a smell.
All right, well, that's true. But now, behind the kitchen here, we've got a garden. Let's take a look at that.
Okay. Remember, Scott, people in colonial times didn't have refrigeration. They couldn't just go to the supermarket, so their gardens were important to them. All their food was either dried, salted, smoked, or they got it fresh from their gardens. People in colonial times ate a lot of meat and grains, so the vegetables, again, were important to them. They did enjoy their vegetables. But one thing that would be common in all gardens would be that they would have an herb garden in addition to their vegetable garden. The mistress of the house would be the one to know which herbs were more important for cooking reasons and which ones were more important to use medically. Let's take a look in the kitchen.
All right. This kitchen is so dated.
I guess so, Scott. We believe this kitchen is original to the property, which means that it was probably built before Mary Washington moved in here in 1772.
Well, the fireplace is great, and I bet it could hold a big roaring fire. That's beautiful.
Probably not very often. Remember, this is a working kitchen. They would have had a fire going, but it would have been to get the charcoals because that's what they actually would have cooked with.
Oh, not a big fire.
Not a big fire, no.
Now, what is this neat little pan with legs?
Some people call it a spider. It's actually a cooking implement. They would pull some of the coals from the fire onto the hearth here and set the spider on top of it. As you can see, it's got short legs, and they adjusted the heat, the temperature for cooking, by the number of coals that they put underneath it.
That makes sense. Now, I call this a trivet.
Right.
I mean, I use this on a table to
Right.
keep things off the table.
Well, it's a trivet back then as well, but they again used it over coals to keep the water in the pot hot.
Okay, now I got one more question for all this stuff.
All right.
What is this?
It's an herb grinder. As we mentioned earlier, common to all kitchens were herb gardens. They would have gathered the herbs, put them in here, and used this to chop the herbs. Everything would have fallen to the bottom, which is really kind of nice.
Yeah.
Today it just flies all over the place.
Makes a lot of sense. So, kitchen utensils in the 1700s were a lot different from those today. But now, she didn't do her own cooking.
No.
Who did?
Her slave, Old Bet, would have been her head cook, and she would have done the cooking probably with Little Bet and one of the other female slaves.
So just a team of
A
slaves
team of
that
cooking,
cooked.
yes.
Well, now, I look around through the whole room and I don't see a sink. What about water?
No, well, we had a well here at the house, but Mary Washington didn't like the taste of the water here in town. So she would send one of her slaves over to Ferry Farm to get water for her.
Well, I guess you've got to get what you want. Now, the meals, when were they? How large were they? Because it was only her most of the
It was
time.
just Mrs. Washington. You've got to remember that if you were in town, you would have stopped by to see her. If you knew George, was custom of the time. So she did occasionally have family or friends in for meals. Most of the meals would have been with breakfast between 8 and 10 in the morning. The main meal of the day would have been between 2 and 4. There would have been a light supper that would probably have been leftovers from the main meal.
Now, we talked about the kitchen, but where did this cook, Old Bet, live?
Well, this kitchen is a quarters kitchen, which means we have living quarters above. Old Bet and Little Bet, probably maybe one other female slave, would have slept upstairs.
So,
Shall we look?
We can take a look. Okay.
All right.
Well, this is some room upstairs. Very tight living space. What kind of furniture would they have had?
Well, there would have been beds for them, but the beds would have been on the floor, more what we would think of today as just a pallet. In a more fortunate household, they might have had a chest to put their clothing in, but most likely a box. As we noticed here, we do have the fireplace downstairs, and the chimney goes all the way up. So living conditions in the summer would have been extremely hot in here.
And in the winter, though cold, they'd have at least had
They would have
some
at least
heat.
had some heat, yes.
All right. Well, this is interesting, but as I said earlier, Mary Washington's kitchen is a little dated. Thanks very much.
You're welcome, Scott. It's been a pleasure.
Hugo, everyone, Hugo and I are in the kitchen, and believe it or not, Hugo is going to fix an early American delicacy. Hugo, I can't believe I'm asking this, but what are you going to cook?
I'm going to make us some lemon suckets. It passes under sweet meats. Now, you might be thinking brats and mustard and honey. No. You know, back in the old days,
All right.
the way that they preserved things was with salt or drying it
Yeah.
or sugar.
Sugar?
And that was in the days before my great-great-uncle Hugo Backintime.
God! Oh, babe, what's the matter with you, Hugo? How many times I tell you?
Keep the camera.
None of this made-up
Keep
family
the
stuff.
cameras
What's the
rolling.
matter with you already?
Keep them rolling.
What are you doing?
It'll be all right.
Hugo.
It'll be all right. Sometimes you just got to take the bull by the horns.
Well, let's go.
Although I said we were going to be making lemon suckets, I'm going to use lemons and oranges. Also, and this might be why Hugo likes this recipe so much, 2 cups, count them, 2 cups of sugar, 2 cups of water, and actually we'll need numerous other water later. I love this recipe because this was a recipe in Martha Washington's cookbook. It was probably served at Mount Vernon. So let's get on with it. Okay, the first thing we need to do is peel the fruit. I use this citrus peeler because, you know, the rescue squad doesn't like it very much when I use sharp objects. Take the citrus peeler, make incisions. You can use a paring knife if you're more confident than Hugo is. Sweetmeats were served as dessert or at the end of special events, and sometimes as in-between meal snacks. As one who reveres the Founding Fathers, it just hurts me to find out that they were sneaking snacks between meals. Next, we gotta get some of the pith off the inside of the rind. Actually, Hugo gets nervous when he uses a sharp instrument. If you hear him yell, "Medic!" or something like that, don't worry, he probably didn't hurt himself. Ideally, we get the rind down to about 1/8 of an inch thick, but don't sweat it. I made some only getting the loose pith off, and they came out great. Okay, so we have the pithed rinds from 6 to 8 lemons, and I have 1 orange in here. Now just put them in the saucepan. We're gonna boil these babies. We're gonna boil these babies for 10 to 15 minutes. The reason that we're boiling them, put in enough water to cover them up good. The reason we're boiling them is to get the bitterness out of the rinds. And you know, Hugo hates bitter. Then pour out the water, and guess what? Do it again. I know that you're not gonna believe this, but we're gonna do it a third time. Now that we finished the third boil, we finally take the rinds out of the pot, add 2 cups of sugar. Yum, there's nothing gooder than sweet. And 2 cups of water. Turn on the heat to dissolve the sugar. Take our rinds and stick them back into the pot and bring it back to a boil. After we get it back to a boil, we're gonna cook it for about an hour. You can tell for sure when they're done because when you take one of the rinds out, it will be translucent. Pretty big word for Hugo. After they're back to a boil, cook them uncovered. Okay, these things have been boiling about an hour. Looks pretty translucent to me. Now you put them on a drying rack or maybe some parchment paper, and this is to let them cool down. You want to take them out of here with either tongs or a slotted spoon because this hot sugar water is really gonna burn you if you touch it. You know, in 1775, John Adams went to a party where they served 20 kinds of sweetmeats. And apparently, this was not uncommon in colonial days. After they're cool enough to handle, wash your hands and roll the rinds in even more sugar. The syrup that's left in the pot after it cools down is great on pancakes or waffles. Now that we got them all sugared up, you really should let them dry overnight because they're pretty sticky. But if the truth be known, these babies are ready to eat. Let's give one a try. Oh, that's good. If you want to keep them for a long time, that's good. You put them in a glass jar and keep them in the refrigerator. I really don't know how long they'll keep because at our house, they never last very long. Scott, give one of these a try.
All right, Hugo. Folks, there you have lemon suckets. They're great, Hugo. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Now, the recipe's on the website, or you can get these 2 cookbooks at the regional library, and all of you have access to that, but I prefer to say, book 'em, Hugo.
History.
Most of you probably know the old traditional song, Over the River and Through the Woods. Well, if you're in Fredericksburg, you're already over the river. What I'd like us to consider is going through Mr. Spotswood's woods, that is Spotsylvania, to Grandma's house. Let's go. Now, in the 18th century, to get through the woods of Spotsylvania County, a person would travel westward along what today is Route 208. Then and now, it was and is called Courthouse Road. Now you reached a point on Courthouse Road 4 miles west of Fredericksburg, and there was this major intersection with Mine Road. Now Mine Road isn't called that at this particular point today. The Mine Road ran from the north part of the county where Governor Alexander Spotswood had his iron mines. It brought the iron products across the county and to his piers and docks on the Rappahannock River. Mine Road is still used to designate it today in some parts of the county, although up in northern Spotsylvania, it's called Spotswood Furnace Road. So, you see, the colonial era 4 Mile Fork was not where you know it today, but a half mile further west at this intersection, the one behind me, where the route of Mine Road crossed Courthouse Road. Today, Hood Drive to your left follows the road. The rest of it is lost in development. That, as the late Paul Harvey used to say, is the rest of the story. But what about 5 Mile Fork? We also have that. Let me tell you that it's not a mile further west from here. Let's go check that out. We're still in Spotsylvania County, but now we're at 5 Mile Fork. We're on the road I use to go to Grandma's through the woods. This is Route 3 West. We still call it the Plank Road. A planked road had flat boards or planks that permitted farm wagons, or it made it easier for those wagons to get crops from the outlying counties of Orange, Culpeper, and of course Spotsylvania, down to the sale in Fredericksburg and even shipment out on the river. There's a great article about the early plank road in the 2009 Journal of Fredericksburg History, a publication, by the way, of Historic Fredericksburg Foundation and available for sale right at the Lewis store where we were earlier. You could get a copy of that when you buy candlelight tour tickets. Back in the early 19th century, a loaded farm wagon with a full team of horses weighed 6 tons. A muddy road couldn't stand up to such a thing. So the turnpike was created and loaded farm wagons paid a toll to be on the planked lane. By the 1850s, the plank road needed some improvements. You see, it had to compete with that new thing that had arrived in the area by the 1830s, the railroad. So, the Turnpike Company hired a road engineer to do what road engineers still do today when they improve a road. The roadway is straightened and leveled. That makes travel along it easier. As they made the improvements, in some cases the plank road followed the same right-of-way. In others, it forged new ones. So it would veer off one way, follow the old, veer off the other way. Thus what was created was a newer road, the Turnpike. But they didn't dig up the old road. It was simply renamed what we call it today, the Old Plank Road. And where the two split, you guessed it, that split was 5 miles west of Fredericksburg, where we are today, 5 Mile Fork. Now, here we still have the Old Plank Road wandering off, as you see over my shoulder, off to the southwest, and later, after it joins the route, it veers off again at Wilderness Church as the Orange Plank Road. But let me tell you, even MapQuest has trouble with this old, new, orange plank road business. But however you take it, as you head over the river through the woods to Grandmother's house, we hope you have a good trip.
History.
In the winter months, there are not as many outdoor events. Check our website for a complete listing. But we want to encourage you to go to our local museums. Go to the White Oak Museum in Stafford. Go downtown to the Civil War Life Museum. Get the family wet plate photograph taken and use it for a holiday gift. Check the website at the Fredericksburg Area Museum because in addition to their exhibits, they've got a great event on November 20th. It's called Years of Anguish, The Coming Storm. It's in cooperation with the National Park Service. It sets off our region's sesquicentennial celebration. Really a lot of information there to get. Next month, we're going to visit Orange County and talk about its fascinating history. Thanks for watching History Scene, and I'll see you next month on The Orange Show.
It may not be the biggest, it's just a little show with stories of Virginia and places you may know. It's about the times and faces that made us who we are. We'll take you to those places, we'll travel near and far. We have history around every tree. We have old-time tales to hear and see. Our past will come alive again on your TV screen while having fun with good old friends here on History Scene, where all the places and faces are traces of history. You'll see us then, you'll see us now, here on History Scene.